The shoes lay side by side in the dirt, toes pointing toward the canyon, as if their owner had simply stepped out of them and never come back. The little girl sobbed so hard she could barely breathe. "I found Mama's shoes," she whispered. "But not Mama." Silas Reed had buried a family once already, 3 winters ago. He'd stood alone beneath a Wyoming sky too wide for grief and lowered his wife and infant son into frozen ground. Since then, he'd learned how to live quietly, how to keep his world small, how to mend fences and tend cattle without letting memory tear him open. So when he heard crying near the stock trough on a blazing July afternoon, he told himself it was the wind or a calf separated from its dam. Anything but what his bones already knew. The sound came again, thin human breaking. Silas dropped his hammer and rounded the barn, boots crunching on sun-baked earth. That's when he saw her, a barefoot child crouched behind a water trough, knees pulled to her chest, fists knotted in her torn dress. Her hair was tangled with dust and burrs, and her feet were cut and bleeding. She stared at him like a trapped animal. "Easy," Silas said, lifting his hand slowly. His voice felt used, rough with disuse. "I won't hurt you." She shook her head, tears streaking clean lines down her filthy cheeks. In her small palm, she clutched a single bone button threaded with blue cloth. "What's your name?" he asked gently. "May," she whispered. "That's a good name," Silas said. "I'm Silas. You're safe here, May." Her lip trembled. "I can't find my mama." The word struck him harder than any blow. He swallowed, crouching to her level. "Where did you see her last?" "The canyon," May said. "We were camping by the rocks." Mama said not to wander. "I didn't. I promise." Silas followed the direction of her shaking finger. The canyon land stretched south, a maze of sandstone in shadow where sound lied and people vanished. "What happened?" he asked. May squeezed the button. "I woke up and Mama was talking to a man." She sounded scared. Then there was a bad smell, like medicine that hurts your nose. Silas's jaw tightened. "When the sun came up, Mama was gone," she said. "Just her shoes. A woman didn't leave her shoes behind. Not out there." Silas lifted May carefully when she tried to stand and wince in pain. She was too light, all bones and fear. He carried her to the house, cleaned her feet, fed her bread and milk, while she ate like a child who hadn't seen food in days. When she finally slept at his table, clutching that button like a lifeline, Silas stood at the window and stared toward the canyon. He had sworn never to open his life again, never to step back into danger for anyone. But somewhere out there, a woman was missing, and a child had trusted him with her last hope. Silas Reed reached for his rifle. The canyon kept secrets, but he knew how to make land talk. Silas rode at dawn. The sky was barely pink over the prairie when he swung into the saddle, the cool morning air already promising heat by noon. He left May asleep on a pallet near the hearth, her small chest rising and falling, the bone button still clenched in her fist like a promise she refused to let go of. "Stay inside," he'd told her softly when she stirred. "Don't open the door for anyone but me." She'd nodded, eyes too big for her thin face. "You'll bring Mama back?" Silas hadn't answered with words. He just touched her hair and stood. Now Buck's hooves carried him south, toward the broken land where rock rose like teeth from the earth. The canyon waited, quiet and patient. It always did. Silas knew this country. He'd tracked cattle through it, hunted mule deer, searched once, long ago, for a lost neighbor who'd never been found. The canyon kept what it took. He found the camp less than 2 hours in. A small fire ring, a torn canvas, scattered belongings trampled into the dust. And there, too neat, too deliberate, were the shoes. Women's shoes. Plain, worn with care. Silas dismounted and crouched low, reading the ground. 2 sets of boot prints. Heavy, men's. Drag marks where someone had struggled. And beneath it all, faint but unmistakable, the sharp chemical sting May had described. "Damn," he muttered. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a woman wandering off and losing her way. Someone had taken her. Silas followed the tracks deeper into the canyon, where the walls narrowed and the light thinned. The trail disappeared over slick rock, then reappeared again in soft sand. He moved slow, patient, letting the land speak. By midday, he heard voices. He tied Buck behind a stand of juniper and moved on foot, rifle cradled against his shoulder. The canyon opened into a box. Stone walls on 3 sides, fire smoke curling into the still air. 2 men sat by the fire, and behind them, slumped against a rock, wrist bound, was a woman in a torn blue dress. Silas's vision tunneled. She was alive, barely conscious, head lolling forward, dark hair tangled and streaked with blood at the temple. But she was breathing. The men laughed, careless, passing a bottle between them. "She'll fetch more once she wakes up proper," one said. "As long as the kid didn't follow," the other replied. Silas stepped out of the shadows. "Hands where I can see 'em." The words cracked through the canyon like a rifle shot. One man reached for his gun. Silas fired. The shot slammed the man into the dirt, his scream echoing off stone. The second froze, hands lifting slowly as Silas advanced. Eyes cold, rifle steady. "Cut her loose," Silas ordered. They did. Silas knelt beside the woman. Cutting the ropes with shaking hands, he forced to stay steady. He pressed 2 fingers to her neck. A pulse. Weak, but there. "You're safe now," he said softly, though he wasn't sure she could hear him. "Your little girl's waiting." When he turned back, his voice was iron. "You're leaving right now, and if I ever see either of you again, I won't miss." They fled. Silas lifted the woman into his arms, her weight lighter than grief should allow, and carried her out of the canyon. Behind him, the land swallowed the echoes. Ahead, a child waited. And for the first time in years, Silas Reed rode home with something fragile and living in his care. One arm braced around the woman's waist, keeping her upright in the saddle as Buck picked his way out of the canyon. The sun was sinking by the time the ranch came into view, the house small against the vast land, a single lamp glowing in the window like a promise kept. The woman stirred as they crossed the yard. "May!" she murmured, voice cracked and dry. "She's safe," Silas said immediately. "She's been waiting for you." That was all it took. The front door flew open before he could dismount properly. May came running, bandaged feet forgotten, her thin arms flung wide. "Mama!" Silas helped the woman down just in time before May crashed into her. They collapsed together on the porch, clinging to each other, sobbing the kind of tears that came from standing too close to the edge and being pulled back at the last second. Silas stepped away, chest tight, giving them space. He'd seen reunions before, rare things on the frontier, but this one cracked something open in him he hadn't realized was still sealed. Inside, he settled the woman onto the bed and brought water, broth, clean cloths. He worked without fuss, the way grief had taught him to move when words were useless. "My name's Clara," she said quietly once the shaking stopped. "Thank you. I don't know how." "You don't owe me explanations tonight," Silas said. "You're safe. That's enough." May refused to leave her mother's side, curling up beside her, one hand gripping Clara's sleeve as if she might disappear again if she let go. Silas took the chair by the hearth, rifle within reach, and kept watch. Morning came soft and slow. The smell of coffee filled the house, something Silas hadn't bothered with much since he'd been alone. Clara appeared in the doorway, moving stiffly, her face pale but determined. "You saved my life," she said simply. "Your daughter saved it," Silas replied. "She found me." Clara swallowed hard. "We were headed west. After my husband died, it felt like the only direction that wasn't behind me." She paused. Those men, they were waiting. They knew lone women don't have many choices. Silas nodded. He'd known that truth a long time. "We can't stay," Clara said, even as her eyes moved around the room, taking in the solid walls, the quiet safety. "I won't bring trouble to your door." Silas set his cup down. "Your wagon's busted. You're hurt. May can barely walk right." He met her gaze steadily. "You'll stay until you're ready to go." "And when people talk?" Clara asked softly. "They always do," he said. "Let 'em." May patted over then, pressing herself against Silas's leg like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Is this our house now?" she asked. Silas's throat tightened. "For now," he said. "Yes." That night, the fire burned low. 3 shadows moving gently across the walls. The house wasn't silent anymore, and Silas Reed realized that saving them hadn't dragged him back into the world. It had brought the world back to him. Word traveled faster than Silas expected. It always did in places where dust settled slowly and people watched closely. By the end of the week, riders passing the ranch slowed just a little too much. A neighbor stopped by with a loaf of bread and too many questions. When Silas rode into town for supplies, conversations quieted the moment he stepped inside the store. A man alone, a woman alone, a child who wasn't his. People made stories where they lacked facts. Clara felt it before Silas said a word. She felt it in the way Mrs. Halvorson's smile tightened, in the way the shopkeeper avoided her eyes, in the way kindness suddenly came with calculation. "We should go," Clara said that evening, after May had fallen asleep by the hearth, "before this costs you more than you mean to give." Silas was mending tack, his hands busy, his expression unreadable. "Go where?" "I don't know," she admitted, "but I can't have my safety become another man's burden." Silas looked up then, really looked at her, not as someone he'd rescued, not as a problem to be solved, as a woman who had learned the hard way that help was never free. "You think I don't know what they're saying?" he asked quietly. Clara's shoulders stiffened. "You don't deserve it." "Deserve's got nothing to do with it," Silas said. "Out here, people need boxes. Makes the world easier to understand. And I don't fit in any of them," she said. Silas set the leather aside. "Neither do I." Silence stretched between them, broken only by the crackle of fire. "There is one way to quiet it," Silas said at last. Clara's breath caught. "What way?" "We make it proper," he said. "Legal." Understanding dawned slowly, and with it, shock. "You don't mean—" "I do," Silas said. "A marriage on paper. Protection. For you. For May." He paused. "For the land, too." Clara stood abruptly, pacing. "You barely know me." "I know you protect your child," Silas replied. "I know you didn't break when men tried to break you. And I know you won't take more than you're given." His voice softened. "That's enough." "And what do you get?" she asked, turning back to him. "What's the cost to you?" Silas thought of long nights alone, of meals eaten standing, of a house that echoed too loudly. "Company," he said honestly, "and the right to keep you safe without explanation." Clara's eyes shone with unshed tears. "This wouldn't be love." "No," Silas agreed. "It'd be partnership." May stirred then, rubbing her eyes. "Why is Mama crying?" Clara knelt instantly, pulling her close. "I'm not sad, sweetheart." May looked at Silas. "Are we leaving?" "No," Silas said gently. "Not if you don't want to." May considered this deeply. "I like it here," she decided. "The house feels warm." Clara closed her eyes. In a world that punished women for surviving, this choice was romantic. It was brave. It was risky. It was necessary. "All right," Clara said finally. "If we do this, we do it honest. No pretending." Silas nodded. "Always." Outside, the wind swept across the plains, carrying rumors and dust and doubt. Inside, 3 people sat closer together than they had the night before, and the shape of a family began to take form, not from love yet, but from choice. The wedding was quiet. No music. No flowers beyond what May gathered herself from the fence line. Just a preacher from town, 2 witnesses, and words spoken plainly under a wide Wyoming sky. Clara wore a simple gray dress she'd sewn by lamplight. Silas wore the same coat he'd buried his wife in years before, clean and pressed, carrying memory and resolve in equal measure. When the preacher said, "You may kiss your bride," Clara pressed a quick, careful kiss to Silas's cheek. It was respectful, measured, safe. May clapped like it was a celebration fit for kings. For a time, peace followed. The house found a rhythm. Clara cooked and kept accounts. Silas worked the land. May learned to ride, her laughter spilling across the fields like something wild and free. The talk in town dulled. People accepted what they could explain, but the past rarely stays buried. Silas found the tracks one morning near the north fence line. 2 horses, Fresh, circling, watching. His chest tightened. He rode hard for town and brought the marshal back with him. By the time they returned, the sun was dropping and shadows stretched long across the ranch. The barn door stood open. Silas ran. Inside, Clara stood with her back to the wall, May pressed tight against her side. Two men blocked the exit. One had his arm bound stiffly at the shoulder. Silas recognized him instantly. The canyon hadn't forgotten. Neither had the men who'd fled it. Step away from them, Silas said, rifle raised, voice deadly calm. The marshal and deputies flooded in behind him, guns leveled. Authority finally arrived. The men dropped their weapons. When it was over, when the shackles were on and the danger was led away, Clara's knees gave out. Silas caught her before she hit the ground. I thought I'd lost you, she whispered. Silas held her, not caring who saw. Never. That night, after May slept, Clara sat across from him by the fire, hands shaking. I can't pretend anymore, she said. What we agreed on, it isn't enough. Silas looked up slowly. I'm terrified, she continued, but I care about you. More than safety, more than shelter. I love you. Silas exhaled, something heavy finally leaving his chest. I've loved you for weeks, he admitted. I was just too afraid to name it. This time when they kissed, it wasn't careful. It was real. Outside, the land was quiet again. But inside the house, fear finally loosened its grip, replaced by something stronger than survival. Hope. The trial ended the way truth sometimes does on the frontier, swift and final. The men were sentenced and taken away in irons, their names written into records instead of whispered in fear. Clara stood straight when she testified, her voice steady even when the memories were not. May stayed with the marshal's wife, drawing pictures of horses in wide skies, blissfully unaware that monsters could be made small by justice. When it was over, Silas didn't look back at the town. He took his family home. Summer turned, as it always did. The heat softened into evenings that smelled of cut hay and cooling earth. Clara's bruises faded. May's feet healed, leaving thin white scars that Silas called proof of courage. The ranch breathed again, doors opening and closing, laughter replacing echoes, light staying on after dark. Love didn't arrive all at once. It came in ordinary moments, in the way Silas fixed Clara's loose chair before she noticed it wobble, in the way Clara set aside the darkest cut of meat for him without asking, in the way May slipped her hand into Silas's like it had always belonged there. One night, while the child slept between dreams, May asked softly, "Can I call you Pa?" Silas's eyes burned. "If you want to." She nodded, satisfied. "I want to." The words settled into him like something he'd been missing all along. Years passed. The ranch grew. 2 more children came, one loud, one quiet. Clara's strength shaped the land as much as Silas's hands ever had. They argued sometimes. They failed sometimes. But they never stopped choosing each other. On quiet evenings, they sat on the porch and watched the sun sink behind the canyon walls. "Do you ever think about the shoes?" Clara asked once. Silas nodded. "I think about how close everything came to ending, and how it didn't," she said. Inside the house, the shoes rested in a wooden box, no longer symbols of loss, but of a turning point, proof that even in the harshest places, mercy could still change the shape of a life. The canyon kept its secrets, but it hadn't kept them, because one man chose to listen, one woman chose to survive, and one child chose to trust again. And that, Silas Reed knew, was the miracle